Good afternoon to everyone. Welcome to our speakers and participants from various sector. Hello po. From REECS, government agencies like DNR, DILG, DTI, DepEd, DOST, NAPACOR, and DSWD. Welcome po. To FIFERN members and other state universities from the private sectors, corporations, foundations, and non-government units. Welcome po sa atin. And also to other international agencies, kung meron man pong hindi nabanggit. Welcome po sa ating webinar. From this time po, ang total number po ng registered participants po natin ay 911. And from for our Zoom, ay meron po tayong 203. And sa FB Live po ay meron na po tayong 22 audience. Again, welcome to the webinar series of the FDC for the year 2021. I am Oliver Marasigan from the Forest Industries and Utilization Policy Unit of the FDC, and I will be your host for this afternoon. The FDC and our partners would like to thank everyone for taking time and joining us this afternoon webinar entitled Enhancing Wealth Creation from Forestland Ecosystems Policy Implications. This webinar is the first of the many webinars in collaboration with the Resources, Environment, and Economic Center for Studies Incorporated, or also known as REECS. REECS is an all-Filipino private consulting company that is committed in the advancement and management of the environment and natural resources for pursuit of sustainable growth and development. And this afternoon, they will share to us their key findings and results of their studies that will help us to appreciate our forest resources and its potential in opening up new opportunities for enhancing wealth creation from our forest land ecosystems and its policy implication. Welcome po sa ating lahat. To formally start our program, let us bow our heads and feel the presence of our Lord as we listen to the opening prayer to be followed by the national anthem performed by the UPLB Harmonia Orchestra. Welcome po sa ating lahat.
Dear God, thank you for allowing us today to meet and share our knowledge and time with one another in this webinar. We are truly grateful for all the blessings you have bestowed upon us. May you extend your divine wisdom to our speaker so that he would be able to impart effectively his God-given knowledge to all of us. Bless the participants as well so that they would be able to glean the vital information from this activity and spread what we've learned in the spirit of your love and generosity. May we realize that this activity should glorify your name. Amen.
Thank you.
welcome po ulit sa ating webinar. We would like to acknowledge po the presence of our DNR, ASEC, and FFB Director, Forester Marshal Amaro, and also Director Celso Diaz. Hello po, sir. As of now, the participants po natin in Zoom are 270 and in FB Live are 26. So before we proceed po, let me show the flow of our program for this afternoon. First, we will listen to the welcome remarks of our Dean, Professor Marlo D. Mendoza, to be followed by a message from the Chair and Presidents of REECS Incorporated, Dr. Jem Castillo. And next is the presentation that will be presented by our former Director, Dr. Tonie Balangue and Ms. Noela Lasmarias. This will be followed by the open forum, awarding of the certificates, and then closing remarks from our Director, Dr. Priscila C. Dolom. And towards the end po, yung some announcement and also reminders po. So good afternoon again. I hope we are all ready to listen and learn for today's webinar. To help us prepare and have a glimpse of what we will learn for this afternoon, let us all listen to the welcome remarks by our dear Professor, Marlo D. Mendoza, the Dean of College of Forestry and Natural Resources, UP Los Baños. Let us give a warm of virtual applause to our Dean, Marlo D. Mendoza.
I would like to start by extending my warm greetings to Dr. Jem Castillo, President and Chair, Resources, Environment, and Economic Center for Studies, or REECS. Our resource persons from REECS, Dr. Tonie O. Balangue, Environment and Natural Resources Specialist, Ms. Noela C. Lasmarias, Social and Environment Specialist, Dr. Priscila Dolom, Director, Forestry Development Center, College of Forestry and Natural Resources, UPLB. Attendees from the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, or DENR, academic institutions, colleagues, students, and guests, a pleasant good morning. We welcome you to the Forestry Policy ETalks 2021, organized by the FDC of the CFNR. Since last year, FDC has been holding a series of policy forums via Zoom platform and its Facebook page as part of its mandate of providing a venue for discussion of current policy issues on forestry, environment, and natural resources. I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate FDC, represented by its director, Dr. Priscila Dolom, and its hardworking staff for organizing this very relevant and timely forum. Today's FDC webinar, entitled Enhancing Wealth Creation from the Forestland Ecosystems, Policy Implications, is co-sponsored by the REECS Incorporated. Our speakers for today are Dr. Balangue and Ms. Lasmarias. Dr. Balangue is a former FDC director and currently an environment and natural resources specialist of REECS. He has more than 35 years of experience in forest, watershed, and environment and natural resources management projects with national, international, and local sectors. On the other hand, Ms. Noela Lasmarias is a social and environmental specialist of REECS. She has more than 25 years of experience in environment and natural resource economics, valuation and accounting, both as a lead expert and as a senior consultant. Both the presentations will tackle the importance of as well as opportunities in our forest land ecosystem. We know that the forestland ecosystem offers multiple benefits, specifically ecosystems, goods and services, but more specifically, the paper will discuss about generating wealth, financial benefits for the improvement of well-being of communities residing in forest lands, undertaking conservation activities, and simultaneously sustainably utilizing medicinal, nutraceutical, cosmetic, wellness, and industrial products. The paper presents opportunities for wealth creation that is sustainable compared to non-renewable form of harnessing natural resource assets that can be found in forest lands. This excludes plant species used for timber and its other wood products such as lumber, pulp for paper, and biomass for energy. The Philippines is truly blessed. Surrounding its 7,700 islands are the oceans and seas where the richest and most diverse marine environment exists. Our fertile land teems with very unique life forms which can nowhere be found except in our country. Several of the species, both aquatic and terrestrial, have yet to be discovered. This uniqueness makes us one of the world's 17 megadiverse countries. The Philippines' flora and fauna comprises up to 70% of the world's species. According to an ADB report in 2017, natural capital is a very important source of wealth in Asia. It can go as high as 85%, such as for countries like Bhutan. No? According to the study, 18% of the country's wealth comes from our natural capital. This is larger compared to the world's average of 5%. The paper will focus on wealth creation from our forest lands. First, described by Whitford in 1911, who recognized 6 forest types. These are mangrove forest, beech forest, dipterocarp forest, Molave forest, pine forest, and mossy forest. Whitmore in 1984 has recognized 11 different forest types, or almost twice, no? Which was adopted by the National Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan of the Philippines in 1997. These are the tropical lowland evergreen rainforest, tropical lower montane rainforest, tropical upper montane rainforest, tropical subalpine forest, forest over limestone, forest over ultramafic rocks, beech forest, mangrove forest, peat swamp forest, freshwater swamp forest, tropical semi-evergreen rainforest, and tropical moist deciduous forest. This is just to give you an idea of the vast diversity of our forest types. In these forests lies tremendous opportunities, particularly species yet to be discovered, identified, characterized, and their potential uses sustainably utilized. Most of our neighboring countries in the ASEAN region have already embarked on wealth creation from their natural resources, particularly forests, and are earning millions of dollars annually. In so doing, they keep their forests intact, at the same time generating substantial wealth, as Dr. Balangue will be explaining in his paper. The global market for medicinal, nutraceutical, cosmetic, wellness, and industrial products have steadily rise and expanding. and is expanding. Interest and appreciation is gradually happening on the uniqueness of the country's forests, as well as the enormous problems confronting it. Different policies were put in place for the conservation of our genetic resources. These include Republic Act 7586 or NIPAS Act, Republic Act 11038 or E-NIPAS Act, EO 247 prescribing guidelines and establishing a regulatory framework for the prospecting of biological and genetic resources, their byproducts and derivatives for scientific and commercial purposes, just to name a few. The DNR, through the Ecosystems Research and Development Bureau, or RDB, as well as with some CFNR faculty, are conducting researches in carrying out DNA analysis of different economically important species. However, it is lamentable that interest in harnessing our forests' wealth is happening at a time where only a few of our forests remain. But on the positive side, the opportunities for wealth creation and at the same time conserving our forests is a very opportune time to save our very few natural forests remaining. I invite you to participate actively in this very important forum and make it a venue to discuss the importance of genetic resource conservation and its sustainable utilization. Again, our congratulations and sincere appreciation to our two speakers. Thank you and good day.
Thank you so much, Dean Mendoza, for that heartwarming and endearing message for all of us, and also giving us a glimpse of the presentation for this afternoon. To continue our program, let us all listen to the message from the Chair and President of REECS Incorporated, Dr. Jem B. Castillo. Sir?
Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for this opportunity for REECS to be part of this Forestry Policy Webinar series of the College of Forestry and Natural Resources, which is my home alma mater as being a graduate of the College of Forestry in 1981 and 1991 for my master's. And it's indeed a welcome opportunity to be here and also participate in this webinar. And thank you also for the opportunity of having this partnership with REECS, which is an organization that provides advice and at the same time also provides support in terms of the technological and technical and analytical work related to forest policy and other areas of discipline. And I'd like to thank Professor Marlo Mendoza, the Dean of the College of Forestry, and I understand Assistant Secretary Mars Amaro, who is also here listening, and former Director of the Ecosystems Research and Development Bureau, Dr. Celso Diaz, and others, colleagues from REECS, and also fellow alumni from the College of Forestry, and also friends. I have difficulty scanning because the numbers has grown so large, and so I was trying to figure out also if there's any from non-Filipino speaking group here, but nonetheless, I'll speak in both Tagalog or English depending on the situation. But thank you again for this opportunity. And I have actually 10 points to start with, but I will not steal the webinar from Dr. Tonie and Noela. Just to start off, because the first thing that came to mind when the topic of wealth creation came about was the word creation itself, wealth creation for that matter. So question is really, what can we create wealth? And so I went back to the biblical passage in Genesis 1:28, which says that God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it, rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, and over every living creature that moves on the ground. So I was wondering, if wealth has been created, can we create more? And so that's an intriguing question, but of course, just to start off, so that you will give you some thought. And also, when we talk about wealth, there's been a growing emphasis more than just now because when we talk of wealth, we're talking about assets. It's not the finance, because we know that money is just a medium, but we're talking here of assets. And so from an individual level, we're talking about a balance sheet. So we have assets and we have liabilities. And if we have more assets and less liabilities, we're okay. But now we're talking more about 4 different types of wealth. And there is a book authored by a fellow economist, also actually Dr. Andy Los Angeles, which I think is also in the audience. Came up with a topic, the changing wealth of nations, accounting for different types of wealth, the manufactured wealth or built capital and natural capital. And then there's now a greater emphasis on human wealth. And more so, if less popular is the social capital. There is such wealth in friendship and political friendship. But our emphasis for this session is actually on our natural capital, which is essentially forest. And so it's a good thing that Dean Marlo actually enumerated all the 11 forest types. And from this, we can actually say that there's quite a lot of wealth in our forests. And it is indeed a fitting topic that deals with the specifics of wealth creation from forests. So historically, we thought of forests only because of the reconstruction that happened in the 1950s after the war. We only think about forests as timber. And then over time, because of the emphasis of leisure in the 1970s and the 60s, there's the wealth of recreation from forests. And then the 80s came with a lot of the destruction and so on and so forth. We now thought of wealth as forests is emphasizing on water and also of wealth for the communities and the environment wealth. And now we are discussing about plant genetic materials as wealth. And this is indeed a fitting discussion because there is greater emphasis on biodiversity and conservation. And so there is really that conflict of which values do we want to emphasize. And so bringing in wealth creation, such as nutraceuticals, pharmaceuticals, is a fitting opportunity for us to really think beyond what was the traditional wealth that we get from the forest. Our actually problem is that when forests are degraded, because in the past we were only thinking about it in terms of macro values like timber, but now we are seeing a different type of value. So in the past it is undervalued, and now there is really that emphasis of putting value more than what we call now as provisioning services of forests, because it turns out that forests have regulating services that includes water regulation, climate regulation, and soil erosion control or sediment control. These are all considered as assets or wealth that we should be thinking about when we talk about forests. And so now we are into developing the genetic resources, but now we're not just thinking about it as mere resources, but we're talking about it as products. And so there is that emphasis, and it's a good thing that we have this Yeah, I thought that wealth creation, as it was being emphasized internationally, maybe started by the UNDP as a concept somewhere else. We know how to think about economic policies that deals with genetic resources, and how do we now put value to these genetic resources. And so there is an increasing generation of information pertaining to not just forest as timber and water and environment, more so in terms of its minor, in the past we call it minor forest products, now we call it non-timber forest products, which is encompassing all kinds of products, including recreation. So these are the good things that we have to think about. So it's also very important that we have quite a varied participants in this webinar so that we can really come up with a good discussion. And my basic question then is, whose wealth is it? So now the issue of who gains from this wealth after we have identified it, or should it, if we may prefer to call it creation, who has the right to those? So these are the questions. And so the question that accompanies that would be, where are these nutraceutical products? Where are these pharmaceutical products in the country? Can we pinpoint them? Can we come up with values of per hectare nutraceutical products inside the forests? How many are they? Can we say that it is sustainable? What will affect its sustainability? Or who will affect its sustainability? Is it allowed? If you are inside a protected area, can you extract those products? And if that's the case, if we have a different land use apart from protected area, if we have a production forest and its primary use maybe for timber, how do we balance between timber or water or soil erosion control and pharmaceutical products? So who benefits? And we are talking about pharmaceuticals, we're also talking about the value chain. So when we talk about the value chain, who in the value chain is benefiting more from the wealth creation? Is it the IPs? Is it the community, non-IPs? Is it the LGU, local government unit? Is it the national government unit? And to which does the intellectual property right belongs? And who has the patent for these products? It's been sort of an issue, the patents for these products, because apparently in some of the products that came from the Philippines has been patented in other countries. So these are the issues that we need to discuss. And as we listen to the topics of presentation by Dr. Tonie and Ms. Noela. So now the challenge, and this is my last statement, is how do we prove that we have enough wealth from forests in terms of the nutraceuticals, pharmaceuticals, and other non-timber forest products? How much potential do we have at the site, specific site, for instance, in Region 1, Region 2, or in even other regions? Can we account for them and say that this is what we have for this particular province, for this particular municipality, so that we can prioritize that these areas are supposed to be production sites for these kinds of products? So these are the things that we need to think about as we listen. So with that, I leave you with those challenges and issues, and I'm hoping, and indeed, this is something that we have to keep in mind as we listen to those presentations by Dr. Tonie and Ms. Noela. I hope that you will enjoy this and come up with something, and apparently we need to have some kind of a policy that relates to this production of wealth creation from other products other than timber, water, and so on. Thank you for listening, and I hope you will have an enjoyable time listening. Thank you.
Thank you po, Dr. Castillo, for that wonderful message and also wisdom about the creation of wealth an opportunity in creating wealth from our forests through genetics and other methods, and look beyond the values of our forests through ecosystem services, and also leaving us ideas that we will think about while listening. So bigyan naman po natin ng round of virtual applause our Dean Marlo Mendoza and the Chair of REECS, Dr. Jem Castillo. Now, let me call on Ms. Jorela Marie Garcia to introduce our speakers for this afternoon. Jor?
Hey, thank you, Oliver. So good afternoon, everyone. I am Jorela Garcia from the Forest Industries and Utilization Policy Unit of the Forestry Development Center, and I'll be introducing our speakers this afternoon. So our first speaker has more than 35 years of experience in forest, watershed, and ENR management projects with national, international, local governments, non-government agencies, and private development sectors. Among his specializations are climate vulnerability modeling, capacity building, project development and implementation of the Ecotown or Communities of Resilience Framework, ENR accounting and valuation, local and provincial government partnership, and process and impact assessment of reforestation and other environmental projects and programs. These are exemplified in his consultancy works and team leadership roles, particularly with the Climate Change Commission, DENR, Philippine Institute of Development Studies, the Department of Agriculture, and the German Agency for International Cooperation. He also holds a PhD in forestry with focus on forest resource management, resource economics, and policy from UP Los Baños, and earned a doctoral enrichment in environmental land use planning from the State University of New York School of Environment and Forestry. He is also a retired professor from the Institute of Renewable and Natural Resources, CFNR UPLB, and he is also a former director of Forestry Development Center from 1990 to 1991. He is no other than Dr. Tonie O. Balangue. Our second speaker has more than 25 years of experience in environment and natural resource economics, valuation, and accounting, both as a lead expert and as a senior consultant. These core areas of her expertise places her among the country's top thinkers in ENR policy, analysis, and development, particularly including the use of market-based instruments and sustainable financing for ENR management. In terms of economic proficiencies, she is an expert in benefit cost analysis, specifically in financial, economic, and extended BCA. She is also well-versed in ENR planning and management, particularly in environmental impact assessments and strategy development. In the field of environment and natural resource valuation, she leads in designing and implementing participatory valuation approaches, training, capacity building and enhancement, and climate change adaptation planning. Her expertise are demonstrated in her major engagements with the Climate Change Commission, Department of Environment and Natural Resources, Department of Interior and Local Government, the World Bank, Conservation International Philippines, and the United States Agency for International Development. In addition, she is part of the pioneer team of experts that develop the payments for ecosystem or environmental services in key protected areas in the Philippines nationwide. Our second speaker also holds a master's degree in environmental studies and is currently completing her PhD on the same program from the University of the Philippines, Los Baños. I'm talking about no other than Ms. Noela C. Lasmarias. Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, let us all listen to Dr. Balangue and Ms. Lasmarias' presentation entitled Enhancing Wealth Creation from the Forestland Ecosystems Policy Implications. Sir?
Thank you very much, Miss De Aurelia. Thank you also for the comments of Dean Marlo Mendoza, our president and chair, for starting up some of the difficult questions, biblical ones. And I would like to thank also the attendance of the Assistant Secretary and FMB Director, Mars Amaro, all the attendees, and also the staff of the DNR whom I worked in the past in some of the projects, and also the Forestry Development Center directors and staff. You might be wondering why Tony Balangue and Noela Lasmarias in this paper, in this presentation. Actually, we were commissioned by the UNDP to do the basic studies for the wealth creation. And also, we have two more what they call these team members, Attorney Elpidio Peria and the late Dr. Jocelyn Eusebio for her technical assistance. And so when I was drafting the paper, some of the information needed to enrich it are found in the papers of Noela Lasmarias, who did most of the economic analysis of wealth creation using the genetic resources. Before going into the proper contents, I would like to acknowledge people who contributed to the policy, to the basic study, the wealth creation, wherein we use the findings of the wealth creation program preparatory study of the UNDP and the DNR, conducted in 2015, to 2017. And also would like to acknowledge the technical inputs of Attorney Elpidio Peria, Dr. Antonio Danyo, formerly of the ERDB, Florita Shapno, the late Dr. Jocelyn E. Eusebio, the DNR, BMB, and DNR FMB representatives. Also for the assistance of Elma Eleria and Alma Segi of DNR FASPO. And of course, for Grace Tena and Baby Supetran, formerly with UNDP. Also, the study team appreciates the assistance of Senro Ruel Colong during the interviews of herbal producers in Davao City and Davao Oriental, to Penro Cleo Colis of Region 7, Cebu City, for linking the interview team to herbal producers in Cebu City, and to Karen Resentes for the herbal producers in Cotabato. These people help us a lot in coming up with the information that we need to build up this basic study on wealth creation. Our objectives in this afternoon paper is to open up new opportunities for enhancing wealth creation from the forestland ecosystems. We know that our sources of income from the forestry sector, which used to be timber, is no longer there. No. However, there are of course other sources, but some of the elements or components of the forest ecosystems are not being considered, one of which is the genetic resources. We also assess the plant genetic resources potential for product development to generate additional wealth for the country. When we say wealth, it's real funds. So, of course, there are many definitions of wealth. You can probably consider the biblical definition, but what we are using here or following here is the definition of the UNDP and the DNR who commissioned us, that it means revenue generation from the forest ecosystems. And then we also identified the problems and issues affecting the enhancement of wealth creation from the forest land through the plant genetic resources in case it will be implemented in the future. We are aware that there are already genetic resources or products in some of the stores. The raw materials for this came from the lowlands, mostly in the alienable and disposable lands. And what we intend is, what about the genetic species from the forest ecosystems who are just being destroyed when extractive operations are favored? And then what are we going to do in the future once we know these opportunities? And then, of course, we would like to recommend a policy development direction, preferably a bill on the enhancement of wealth creation from the forest land ecosystems through the plant genetic resources. Dean Marlo Mendoza mentioned about the existence already of the NIPAS law and the enhanced NIPAS law, but these laws did not specifically mention about the plant genetic resources. So in the bill that we are envisioning it is focused solely on the plant genetic resources. Notice also that we did not consider here the fauna genetic resource or the terrestrial genetic resources because we want to do it little by little. We want to start it with the plant genetic resources first because we believe that it is easier to convert these plant genetic resources into realizable products in the near future. We will be presenting to you in this policy paper definition of terms wherein we have to understand what we mean by enhancing wealth creation, forest land ecosystems, goods and services, and plant genetic resources. And then we will go into, in general terms, the methods of enhancing wealth creation from the forest land ecosystems. And then we have to let me just connect my power supply. And then we have to we have to talk about what are the possible plant genetic resources in the forest land ecosystems, goods and services. And then Noela will present to you the trade and economics of plant genetic products. Then I will present to you the development opportunities and then the social policy implications of developing the genetic resources, the economic policy implications, and the environmental policy implications, and also the next steps that we envision the Forestry Development Center in coordination with the DNR would pursue in the future in order to realize the result of this policy paper. The conceptual framework we used in the basic study, which we also adopt in the policy study, is presented in this slide. And it is always a standard that we have to, in every project, that we have to present inception report wherein we have to describe the methodologies. And since we were four here, there were four methodologies. Methodology for the economic valuation and KII of the trades, and also KII of the SUCs and some of the people's organizations visited by Noela. And then we reviewed literatures and studies relevant to genetic resources. And then the project is heavily dependent on consultations with the stakeholders. Every move we do or we did were subjected to stakeholders consultations, wherein here the impact, the KII of the SUCs and people's organizations in herbal production, as well as the KII of herbal medicine outlets manufacturers, were disseminated to the stakeholders, and also the impact assessment were also referred to the stakeholders consultation, and also the valuation of GR or genetic resources, wherein we focus only on economic and financial analysis based on available data that we generated. Enhancing wealth creation in our parlance means increasing generation of additional economic or financial value from the forest, land, ecosystems, goods, and services, focusing only on the genetic resources meantime. And then forest land ecosystems, areas of the mountain ecosystems, forested or non-forested within the public lands. The forest land ecosystems include mossy forest, mixed dipterocarp forest, pine forest, grassland, beech forest, mangrove forest, and peatland. Ecosystem goods and services include provisioning, supporting, regulating, and cultural services, goods and services from the forest land ecosystems. And there are many of these. And then plant genetic resources, any types of vegetation or species with potentials for medicinal, nutraceuticals, cosmetic, wellness products, and other industrial products. These exclude plant species used for timber, species for non-medicinal, non-nutraceuticals, non-cosmetic wellness products as part of the genetic resources. Why focus on the plant genetic resources to enhance wealth creation? We know that the forest land ecosystems have several goods and services which have never been developed and sustainably managed for wealth creation. The plant genetic resources are among the provisioning services with ready markets, but these are not utilized. Timber takes a long time to grow, long waiting time to harvest, long time to realize their benefits. I am not against timber production, but I am exposing the application of multiple use forest management. The forest land ecosystems can be managed through the multiple use management systems, which we are aware of, mostly forestry graduates. The plant genetic resources from the forest land ecosystems as sources of additional wealth have not been institutionalized in the revenue generation system of the government. And we notice that if you go to the malls, you see products from plant-based materials being sold, meaning to say that at the lowlands, they are already producing products out of the plant genetic resources. The plant genetic resources from the forest lands are usually sacrificed in favor of extractive operations in the natural resources, such as mining. We don't do any analysis. We don't do any analysis or surveys on what are the species that have potentials for such benefits or products, logging, and forest land conversions and infrastructure development. So of course, EIA is required, but the assessment of the vegetative cover is limited to the identification of the species and probably general functions of this species, but none on the medicinal, nutraceutical, cosmetic, wellness, and other industrial uses of such species. Let us look into the present economic situation of the country, starting from the first quarter of 2022 2018 to 2019, we at that time we were enjoying positive gross domestic product, but during the outset of the pandemic, there were lockdowns, including our economic establishments, and it resulted to a negative 17% from our gross domestic product. And in first quarter 20 to 2022, our deficit is already at 4.2%, but unfortunately, there is again lockdown being implemented by the government, and therefore we expect the further reduction of the gross domestic product. In order to cope up with the expenditures of the pandemic, our government borrowed money from the World Bank at 1.2 billion, and you can see here the specific amount, which are, for instance, $100 million for personal protective equipment, medicine, and devices such as mechanical ventilators, cardiac monitors, and COVID-19 test kits. 600 million for the Pantawid Pamilyang Pilipino program for 4-piece and to cushion the pandemic impacts on poor households, and 500 million to boost the Philippine pandemic response under the third risk management development policy loan, aims to support programs that improve disaster response and rehabilitation. We were thinking that this wealth creation policy should be financed under this 500 million if there are still money from it. And we also borrowed money at 1.5 billion loan from the 10 million grants from the ADB and 1.5 billion loan from the same institution. You have here the uses of these grants to procure emergency medical supplies and establish COVID testing laboratory for San Fernando, Pampanga, 5 million grants for emergency food supplies for more than 162,000 vulnerable households in Metro Manila and nearby provinces in April to May 2020, 1.5 billion loan in April 2020, which contributed to the government's wage subsidy and social protection programs, 200 million loan in April to help the government finance emergency cash transfers to poor households, 2 million grant to assist distance education during the pandemic by providing teachers training and learning tools and support the learning of secondary school students from disadvantaged households. So you can just imagine that our kids ay may utang na in the future if we consider these loans. The methods of enhancing wealth creation from the forestland ecosystems relative to plant genetic species are the following. Market promotion and implementation of the bioprospecting value of forestland ecosystems for genetic plants. Applications of multiple economic instruments in the multiple uses of forestland ecosystems, goods and services. And third, development and marketing of plant genetic species for medicinal, nutraceuticals, cosmetic wellness, and other industrial products that have not been discovered. And this policy study focuses initially on items 1 and 3, and item 2 will be further studied to establish its social, economic, and environmental effects, although there are already some applications of this, but we need some more additional data and information. Let us look at the 2019 classification of forest lands in the country. 66.82% is established timberland, 21% is established forest reserve, and then national parks and watersheds, 8.91%, military reservation, 0.61%, civil reservation, 80.84%, fish ponds, 1.1%. And if we consider the forest cover, percentage forest cover, if you look at the forestry statistics in 2019, they are still maintaining this 2015 forest cover. And we have here 66% of the open forest canopy, mangrove forest 4%, and for the closed forest canopy, 28%. So the reason why for this genetic policy study is to take advantage of the remaining forest cover, which is basically 7.14 million out of the 17 million in when was that? 1900s. Here are the goods and services that we can derive from the forestland ecosystems. For the mossy forest, of course, we can have water, as mentioned by Jem, NTFP, flowering plants, especially during the pandemic. Many of our flowering plants species from the mountains were cultivated in the lowlands and marketed with very high priced plants, no? And then we have climate regulation, soil regulation, wildlife, carbon, medicine, nutraceutical, cosmetics, other industrial products, and recreation. And most of these ecosystems, we have more or less the same goods and services with little variation. But what I want to emphasize is that the medicinal, nutraceutical, cosmetic, and other industrial products are there. We do not know only because we don't focus our effort or management to these ecosystems, goods, and services. So that what we want is in all these ecosystems, in all these forest ecosystems, we would like to know the total plant genetic resources in the country's forest ecosystems. We want to identify them. Once we identify them, we determine their value, we assess and do accounting, and subject to benefit cost analysis whenever there are competing resources. And we want to know the specific species, where they are located, how many of them, and for whom. And we would like to be specifically looking for medicinal products or plants, nutritional products, wellness plants or products, and other industrial products. And that partly answers, if I remember right, Jem's question or the Dean Marlo's question. But anyway, we can only identify some of these. And that's because we did not focus our management systems in the natural resources in the past. When it comes to the problems and factors contributing to the plant genetic resources, we found the following: depletion and depreciation of the genetic resources in the forest land ecosystems. When we talk of depletion, we refer to physical degradation. And when we talk of depreciation, we refer to the declining value of the remaining genetic resources, probably affected by supply. And here are some of the contributing problems. One is poaching, illegal collection, illegal patenting of products of genetic resources extracted from the Philippines by local and foreign companies. Ms. Noela will give you some examples of this. Piracy of traditional knowledge on medicines and industrial products developed by indigenous people and scientific research results of students, researchers, and scientists on genetic resources. Lack of scientific knowledge on the medicinal, nutraceutical, cosmetics, wellness products, and other industrial uses and properties of genetic resources. I would say our knowledge, especially for genetic species in the forest ecosystem, is not that much, can only be counted in our 10 fingers. Lack of effective and efficient genetic resources management systems. I noticed that for all natural resources and environment resource in the Philippines, I have not seen a genetic resource management system patterned after the work of Dr. Juan Adolfo Revilla, framework on the forest resources management system. What he did is a good basis for coming up with management systems for the natural resources, wherein we can see there the important elements of a real management systems. And probably because our forest resources did not consider this framework, it ended up to barely 7.14 million hectares today. There is inadequate monitoring of bioprospecting, genetic species collection and poaching, and lack of tracking system for patents and copyrights. Inadequate monitoring of bioprospecting, we have large forestland ecosystems throughout the country, and there are many entries, there are many exit points, and it is really very difficult to guard these entrance points, exit points, simply because there are not much money provided by the government. So it's really difficult to monitor the poaching, the bioprospecting, and the lack of tracking system for patents and copyrights. We don't even know who are the people or the companies that are bringing out our species and having this patented or copyrighted somewhere in other countries. And in terms of funding support from the national government, the budget for genetic resources management, I would say, is not that much. And in fact, if you look at the budget of the PCHRD, the one that is responsible for health research, Ms. Noela will give you the statistics that we encountered before. And there is declining number of scientists, researchers, and science graduates. This was forwarded by the DepEd that we invited during one of the stakeholders consultations. And accordingly, it is sad to say that most of our scientists are also retiring. In fact, majority of them who have already retired. We still have researchers. And what is sad also for our science graduates is that they ended up working in call centers because there are no employment opportunities for them except the SUCs, the government, which cannot accommodate all of them. And therefore, the effect is a reduction of people who we can rely on the discoveries of additional genetic products. The other one is lack of employment opportunities for scientists, researchers, and science graduates. Yes, you can only count the pharma countries, the local pharma countries in the country. And of course, I mentioned a while ago, the schools, government institutions, research institutions. But one lacking here is, I think, in terms of the incentives, it's not comparable to scientists in other countries, no? So therefore, if that is the case, we cannot expect them to work to discover more products or genetic products that the government can sell later on. The other problem is limited laboratory facilities for scientific studies on genetic resources to discover their medicinal and other industrial uses. And for your info, we have only one genomic laboratory in UP Diliman. I think there's another one in Mindanao. But can you imagine sending your specimen? You are, for instance, in Region 1 or Region 5 or Region 7. You will be sending your specimen to these genomic centers. And of course, because there are only two, they will pile up, and you cannot rush up for the result of the laboratory analysis. So what is recommended here is for major SUCs to be provided with such facilities, laboratory facilities, so that they will be able to come up with additional products. No? The other problem is undefined roles and responsibilities of rural people in the protection and management of genetic resources. In other words, for instance, the indigenous people, wherein most of the plant genetic resources are found in their areas, they don't know their functions. No, they don't even know whether they will also benefit from it. And the same is true with the LGUs and the rural people. They don't know really their specific roles and responsibilities regarding the protection and management of the genetic resources. So the result is, of course, deterioration and depreciation of the genetic resources. May I now call on Ms. Noela Lasmarias to present the biopirated plant genetic products patented in or by other countries.
Thank you, Tony, for that. No, when we search for one of the problems with genetic resources is that since we do, like for instance, nata de coco, we do develop nata de coco. In fact, we have exported nata de coco. But if you look at the registry of patents, you will see that it's now patented by Japan, ang nata de coco. And we have other products that have been our native, like ampalaya mixed with talong, and are now patented in the United States by Cromac, New Jersey, for the treatment of diabetes. Yet we also have certain products, ampalaya products here in the Philippines, but still it is we lag behind in terms of applying for patents of many of our products. For the Philippine yew tree, for instance, also found in Mount Pulag, it is reported that it has been patented by the University of Philadelphia for taxol and cancer curing chemicals. So one of the things that why do we emphasize biopiracy? It's because we don't. If we look at wealth creation, then we do miss out on the income from from developing these products. So in a sense, not only the country is missing out, our communities are also missing out on certain things. So famous also in terms of biopirated materials, genetic materials, is the Philippine sea snail, yung Conus magus, has already been patented by REECS, Incorporated, a US-based pharmaceutical company, for its toxin called SNX-111, which is a painkiller that is reported by scientists to be 1,000 times more powerful than morphine. Yet yung REECS, yung pain relieving aspect of REECS, it's even better than morphine in a sense that morphine, as you use it more, then its efficacy is less. You develop some your body adjusts to morphine. But REECS in itself, yung SNX-111, doesn't have that property. So in a sense, that's better than morphine, but more powerful. It is the other one is ilang-ilang, Cananga odorata. It's used in perfume. Is being patented by the French fashion house Yves Saint Laurent for more than 20 years now for the manufacture of high-class line of perfumes. In fact, the ilang-ilang in Pampanga, we have plantation that's we found out is now they're growing. It's a contract growing with a company, with a French company. Banaba also, a well-known herbal medicine used in the Cordillera Highlands and other parts of the Philippines, was patented by a Japanese company as anti-diabetic. Yet we have so many things that going on in the country, but we miss out on a few, on many of this. Saluyot, for instance, or jute, was patented by a Japanese company for its anti-stress properties, now sold in both powdered and tablet form. And Sambong, Blumea balsamifera, and Lagude and Kohol are now subject to many patent claims by Japanese companies. Fortunately for Lagunde, it's being patented by Filipino scientists. Okay, next, please.
Thank you, Noela. I'll go back to this. The result of our KIIs of herbal products in drugstores conducted in 2017 is given here. Notice that the company name were coded because one of our agreement is they will provide the information provided that their names will not be reflected. So that's why it's coded. Because they are afraid that authorities will discover that they are really making a good income. For instance, here, of course, this is gross, no? This one is 40B. This one is in various parts of Laguna and Davao, and there are some figures here to indicate the level of their income or sales. And total-wise, also in Davao City, Cotabato City, Cebu City, no? And we have here, for an average total number of firms, 64, their total sales is 699.3 billion. Noela, I'll call back again to you.
Okay. This is actually a slide that looks at these are studies done outside of the country, looking at the trade, the value of trade of drugs and so medicinal and nutraceutical products and supplements. So when you do, it was mentioned earlier by Dean Mendoza that market for genetic resources is increasing. Indeed, these data, although they are dated 2003 to 2004, already indicate that there is indeed an increasing market and community demand for genetic resources. While the demand may put certain species at risk of extinction if it's not managed well, there's great economic opportunities to be gained by communities, by our scientists, and our country in general. If you develop our genetic resources in terms of medical and pharmaceutical and nutraceutical products. So what this slide presents are studies. For instance, the Singh et al. In 2013 projected a $62 billion value of trade, and this is expected to increase by 5 trillion in 2050. Sharma 2003 projected that the total drugs and nutritional supplements trade for that year in 2004, I think, it's 75 billion, and this is again cited by the holistic understanding for justified research and action. It's an organization doing research on genetic resources. OTC, over-the-counter drugs, as well as prescription drugs, is about 45 billion out of the 75 billion. Okay, next, please. So 30 billion of that 75 billion is actually nutrition supplements. So again, we see that nutrition supplements, nutraceutical products are also increasing, even at the early stage in 2004. Pharmaceutical products also in 1993, way back in 1993, already is valued at 80 billion. This is a 57% of pharma products are derived from natural product itself and its derivatives or analogs. This is a study by Grifo and others in 1997. So as early as 1993 up to 2004, we already see large trade, value of trade in terms of pharmaceutical and nutraceutical products. Next, please. Okay, let's look at Asia because that was a global one. So if we look at Asia, unfortunately, we don't have data for the Philippines. So the studies that came out in our literature review looks at Hong Kong with a volume of 72,000 plants, pharmaceutical plants. The import 72,000, and that is valued at 1 billion already. That's import. That's a large, very large opportunity for a country outside Hong Kong to sell to Hong Kong in terms the products, But these are plants, 77,250 tons of pharmaceutical plants. So you can just imagine that volume where they are taken. No, that's in 2003. For South Asia, the total value of trade for plants is 200 million to 1 billion in the 1980s. And 70% of that traded plants are actually threatened medical plants with an annual growth of 15 to 20%. So this was a study done in 2010, I think Karki in 2010, that's wrong in 2000, that's 2010. So the next slide will also tell us that India actually is leading in the trade, So it's in 1980s to 2005. In the 1980s, they already have the value of their trade is already 700 million, and in 2005 they already export 100 million to 2.5 billion in terms of pharma and nutraceutical products. So that's Karki again in 2010. So Nepal also has increasing trade of medicinal plants and with nutraceutical and pharmaceutical products. These are in 2007 and 2005 studies. So you can just imagine if we see increasing trade in these products, how the value of trade in India, Nepal, in South Asia would look like today, even before the pandemic. Maybe with the pandemic, we don't know how much that trade would be. Okay, next slide, please. So that's just a summary of what was presented earlier for Nepal and for South Asia. Next, please. So we were talking about biopirated products, products that had been patented by other countries but found or discovered in the Philippines. There are two famous cases of drugs developed by Filipino scientists with specimens from the Philippines that were patented by foreign companies. And one was erythromycin. That's Eluzone. That's erythromycin. It's an antibiotic, a broad-spectrum antibiotic used for the treatment of respiratory tract infection, intestinal infections, and several several sexually transmitted diseases. So if you look at, I estimated the foregone benefits from Elozone. There's an ongoing claim by the Filipino doctor Abelardo Aguilar and family. Dr. Aguilar is already dead, but the family has claims of 500 million US dollars for royalty. What happened? So in 1949, Abelardo Aguilar, then working as a researcher for the drug company Eli Lilly, discovered erythromycin from a fungus, Streptomyces erythraeus, which was designated, later on the designation was changed to Saccharopolyspora erythraeus. It's a tongue twister. Found in the soil of Iloilo. The sample was sent to the laboratory in the United States by Eli Lilly, and the Eli Lilly research team led by J.M. McGuire managed to isolate erythromycin from the metabolic products of the fungus. Eli Lilly filed for patent protection of the compound in 1952, and the US patent was granted in 1953. Which listed Bunch, Robert L. Bunch, and James E. McGuire as co-inventors on behalf of the company. So erythromycin was formerly called eloticin, was commercially launched in 1952 under the brand name Elozone. After Iloilo, where it was originally collected, Eli Lilly never paid or acknowledged Dr. Aguilar and never paid any royalty until his death in 1993, claiming that the company owned the product since the doctor was an employee then of the company. Of course, the heir sued for 500 million. So potentially, with 500 million, they could have earned 25 million a year, no, for 20 years. If you from 1952 to 1972. Then if you look at, I used the 2015 global antibiotic demand and the 2013 global antibiotic demand and the market share of erythromycin of that demand, of that global demand, and came out with a total potential annual foregone royalty from 1952 to 1972 at about 3%, no, maximum royalty of 37.8 million annually, or a total potential foregone royalty from those years of 756 million, which means that they could have earned 756 million from Elozone at that time. But unfortunately, in 2002, the US FDA published a research article demonstrating that Elozone stood out with a side effect profile 12 times greater than other chemical forms of erythromycin. Thus, it was withdrawn from the market in that year, not 2002. So, if we have better data in terms of global demand, because these are the only things that I can see in the when I researched, then we can have better. We can probably still get a better idea of the total foregone royalty from erythromycin itself. But since it was withdrawn in 2002, then there's none now. There are other products, erythromycin products in the market, but not Elozone. Okay, next. The other very famous product is actually from let me see, just a moment. Okay, another often cited product is Seconotide, a painkiller. We already it was already mentioned earlier, which is 1,000 times more potent than morphine. So what I did was look at the U.S. market for Seconotide, no, and from 2005 to 2007, it's valued at 30.7 million US dollars. So total, because in 2005 it's 0.63 and 6.3, and 2006. So you see the market value on those years. So the potential royalty that we could have earned is about 0.921 million. The average growth rate at that time would be from 2005 and 2007 is about 0.397. So the projected, if you look at, that's only the US market, but so if you project the global, projected global revenue in 2016, it's about 249.7 million. Hence the projected royalty for 2016 would be about 7.5 million US dollars. And you have a foregone earning from 2005 to 2016 of about 8.4 million US dollars. So, next please. Okay. Again, one of the things that we're interested in is what is the bioprospecting value of our forest really. Now we have closed canopy forest and open canopy forest, but we don't know what's in it. So what's really the bioprospecting value? If we allow bioprospecting, if we allow a controlled bioprospecting activity in our forest, is there enough incentive for people to do it? No. So I used methodology for them. It present so Rouser as small has as a way of estimating bioprospecting values from both canopy forests and open forests. So these are data that are needed to do that. So the area we have based on Ambal et al. In 2012 and FMB in 2015. These are the area in terms of 1,000 hectares is 1,868 million hectares. We have 1.8 million of closed canopy and approximately 4.3 million of open canopy forest. And the total number of species based on Ambalan et al. Is about 9,253 species inside the closed canopy forest, and the open canopy is about 9,000, also the same for closed canopy, open canopy. Actually, there's you don't have open canopy or closed canopy classification. It's just the total number of species. So I just used it to, I just assume that the number of species in the closed canopy are the same in the open canopy, the number. But that's not exactly right, because if you have an open canopy forest, the composition, species composition could change. So the number of endemic species is 6,091, and I also assume that would be the same with open canopy forest. It may not be right, but we don't have information as of now on the total number of endemic species in closed and open canopy forest. So there are 1,500 plants used by traditional healers in terms of species. So I also assume it's the same with closed canopy and open canopy forest. And there are 480 medicinal plants scientifically verified, and 10 of those 480 are already validated as safe and effective and sustainable. So the density of endemic plants per 1,000 hectares is 3.2 based on those data above. So that's a computed density per unit area per 1,000 hectares. Next, please. So using the model parameters of Rouser and small, we computed all the parameters and the cost parameters. So we looked at the revenue, no? Revenue per 1,000 hectares of closed canopy. It's about 343,000 more than, and it's the same with open canopy, and the cost about also the same. So what is the value? Next slide, please. What is the value of bioprospecting value of our forest? The next slide. So it's actually based on the Rouser and Small's procedure and methodology of calculating for the bioprospecting value. We have a net present bioprospecting value of about 1.7 or 1.8 billion pesos, or in the closed canopy forest, and then in the open canopy forest, it's about 1.1 billion pesos. So if we say there's bioprospecting value is about that much, then there's enough incentive actually to do bioprospecting. We use a discount rate of 10%, of course, and willingness to pay for conservation per 1,000 hectares forest is about 3,690, no? Computed using yung equation of Rouser and House. So let's look, that's just a computation, but let's look at how Lagundi, Gamet, yung tea, yung massage oil and healing oils fare in terms of gross margin, no? So Lagundi is actually gross profit margin is about 72%. Gamet, yung porphyria species in northern, it's found only in northern Luzon, in Ilocos Norte, no? It's only found there because of the cooler sea climate sa sea. So it's the gross profit margin is about 88%. It's an exportable product. It's being exported dried to Taiwan and Japan. So in fact, Gamet, there's a plane that goes to Ilocos Norte and just for that Gamet, no, dried seaweed. I think it's a seaweed and in Siquijor, they have what they call mystical tea. It's composed of 7 herbs, and the gross profit margin is about 62%. No, and the Colinos massage oil, it's actually from Pittosporum ramiflorum. Nagtang twist na naman ako. So it's about 56% ang gross margin, and healing oil is also 79%. What is so interesting in Siquijor is that they have controlled the collection of medicinal plants, simply because they have an organization of traditional healers, and they also have the traditional healers, the head traditional healers, only allow certain people to go into the forest and collect at certain times of the year. This during Holy Week, they collect specimen only during Holy Week. In a sense, they have protected their forest and the species inside the forest. But since they need materials for their oil, for the oils, what they do is they have backyard. They do backyard planting. So they have species they collect. They allow collection of species in the forest, and they allow backyard propagation of those species, so that they have sources, no, of oil. But those kinds of traditional control of collection may be something that needs to be looked at, and probably if that can be replicated in other areas, so much the better. Okay. Tony Balangue is out. Okay, so
I'm here. I'm here.
this is what you're still around. Okay,
Yeah, I'm
so
here.
let's look at the annual budget of PCHRD, and we see that in 2012 it launched the Tuklas Luna Center, project. It aims to develop new drugs for tropical and other diseases, so including cancer, and they have established and identified Tuklas centers. So it's also from 2010 to 2015, you will see that they have tremendously increased their budget, the total appropriation for these Tuklas centers, for the researches that they do. So the proportion of this budget to the total proportion of budget for programming health and related activities have increased from 67% to 92% in 2015. So we don't know what the 2017 onward looks like in terms of appropriation, but from 2010 to 2015, the increase in budget has really increased, especially in 2012 when they launched Tuklas Lunas. So there's a jump from 42% in 2011 to 236% yung annual change in 2012. It decreased in 2013, but in 2014 again it increased. So it could be that in 2013 they still have a lot of money, and the Tuklas centers, the cost of establishing the Tuklas centers was really in 2012 and 2013. So that's it. I think we, in terms of budget, if this the trend in annual appropriation for PCHRD is increasing from 2010 to 2017, and it still increases now from 2017 to current, then they probably tell us that they're very serious in terms of looking at developing new drugs and from our genetic resources. So back to Tony, please.
Yeah, thank you, Noela. So I did some comparison of the value of brownwood exports and the medicinal and aromatic plants parts exported to Southeast Asia in 1980. 1980 was selected because this is the year where more or less we have comparable what do you call this figures for log export in 1980. The total value was $92 million according to the PFS 204 statistics, and based on our table in 1980, the value of the genetic products there was from 200 million to 1 billion, according to Poffenberger in 1990. And if we compare the wood exports, meaning fuel wood, lumber export, plywood export, veneer export, with the herbal products, I'm sorry that I was not able to get the export value of herbal products, but I compared it to the local value, and still, the local value was estimated at 40.8 billion pesos, and if you say that 50% of this would go to overhead costs, salaries, rental of stores, will have a net of 20.4 billion. And if you compare that with 6.2 billion of the total wood exports, the herbal product value is still higher by 203.7%. The plant genetic products are envisioned to help sick people, and these are based on the morbidity data of the DOH. So we have here the morbidity information for acute respiratory infection. These numbers are the infected persons, acute lower respiratory tract infection, hypertension, bronchitis, acute watery diarrhea, influenza, urinary tract infection, TB respiratory. So these are some of the potential targets for the genetic products that we intend to produce. And according to the data of the PSA, the plant genetic products causes of deaths in the Philippines, preliminary. So they have here the highest is ischemic heart disease, neoplasm, cerebrovascular diseases, diabetes, pneumonia, hypertension, coronavirus, and not identified, but look at the death of coronavirus as recorded by the PSA. And chronic lower respiratory infection, other heart diseases, respiratory tuberculosis, remainder of diseases of the what is that? Genitourinary system, etc. No? So I'm showing these figures, these statistics to show that there is really a potential demand for the genetic resources. Instead of relying on imported products like, of course, vaccines, which are very expensive. So why can we not develop our genetic resources in the Philippines? So there are about 7.2% of the population already vaccinated. And comparing it with the other countries, India 7.6, US 50.2, Brazil 19.7. The reason why I presented here is because I want to net out those vaccinated and to more or less determine the number of potential people who will be using genetic resources in the future. And here it's about 1.03 million people, no? Expected to be using plant genetic resources, excluding nutraceuticals, cosmetics, and other industrial products. Now let's go to what should we do. First is we have to identify the plant genetic species in every forestland ecosystem. It's just like doing timber inventory or forest inventory, you know, mapping them out, mapping where they are. We want to know their location so that we can give due protection for them. No? We assess the R&D and Fox traditional practices relative to the plant genetic species being used by indigenous people and people in the upland community. So we may start here, although of course it is very difficult to get their information from them because they are protecting their traditional practices. No? And then once we have identified the species, we subject this to DNA or genomic characterization studies. And this is a continuing activity of as much as possible, covering all the plant genetic resources in the forest lands. And next is we need the services of microbiologists, biochemists, doctors, and other virologists, immunologists, specialists who can really determine who can identify the bioactive compounds and toxic compounds in the genetic resources and do segregation of these bioactive compounds and toxic elements. Also, this is continuing until we finish all the genetic species. Marking on the ground the location of planting materials. this will partly answer the question of Jem Castillo a while ago. That we don't have to do the extraction of plant parts in the forest where they are, but as much as possible, we do some seeds, wildlings, or collection of plant parts and transferring this to gene banks, wherein these gene banks will contain all these genetic species. And of course, after planting, we do have to protect them and manage them well. And we do research and development of propagation techniques of plant genetic species. We have, for instance, the ERDB, whose one of whose function is genetic R&D. Production of planting materials. We want to control this because, we don't want planting materials which are inferior coming from other suppliers. So as much as possible, it's only from the research agencies of the government. Then we have to allocate the plantable areas in the CBFMA, PAC-BARMA, and other areas covered with other tenurial instruments in the development of plantations of plant genetic species, considering species site suitability. Zero soil toxicity, no insecticides, fertilizers, and pesticides. Planting, of course, by the CBFMA, PAC-BARMA holders, protection of the planted genetic species, supply contract as much as possible. If local pharmaceutical industries would need raw materials, and then of course clinical tests should pass through protocols, pass through the animal test and human test to ensure the efficacy of the products and safety. Then production, commercialization, and marketing of plant genetic products by the industries. Professionals and organizations are encouraged to invest in the establishment of plantations and development of plant genetic products. Private survey sectors, especially on soil toxicity analysis, are encouraged to participate. Capacity development of all participating sectors. Benefit sharing mechanism to benefit all participating stakeholders, communities, and individuals who participated in the development of the genetic products. Now, just to give an idea and to share with you our review of literature on the medicinal plants, what we are looking for are alkaloids, terpenoids, flavonoids, phenolic acids, tannins, lignins, coumarins. And we have been reported to show their potentiality against infections caused by pathogenic microorganisms. There are many of these in the forest, phytochemicals, only a matter of identifying them with the help of our scientists. Phenolics, alkaloids, carotenoids, etc., down to tannins. We are aware that in the mangroves, we have species that produce tannins, and therefore they have potentials for medicinal purposes. Anthocyanins, of course, flavonoids, flavonoids, etc. Essential oils that are antivirals. Oils from citrus species, Hyssopus officinalis, Elysium species, mayweed tea, tris, menta, Santalum, pinus, thyme, ginger, other aromatic plants with antiviral activities were well documented by several researchers. Essential oils are available to insert non-specifically into the lipid double layer of the viral envelope, which alter the fluidity of the membrane. Monoterpenes, oxygenated sesterpines, phenylpropanoids of essential oils are capable of disrupting the phospholipids bilayer membrane of human coronavirus because of their lipophilic nature, which interfere the structure of viral envelope proteins during the infection
Hello po. Mukhang nagkaroon po ng technical problem po si Doc Tony. Parang nawalan po ata siya ng internet. So ayun po, for some announcement po, later po towards the end of our seminar, we will post po yung evaluation link through the QR code po, and ipo-provide din po yung link sa Zoom chat and Facebook comment section po. And for those participants po na gusto pong makahingi po ng presentation po ni Doc Tony, kindly email to us a request po para ma-send po namin sa inyo yung presentation po ng ating pong resource speakers po ngayong araw na ito. And also for some announcement din po, next month we will continue our forest policy ETalks, yung watershed management series in support to Forestland Management Project, Save Our Watershed campaign from September to November 2021. Kindly visit lamang po yung aming Facebook page for some announcement and details po. And yung certificate din po ng webinar na ito, ibibigay din po namin sa inyo after po ma-accomplish po yung evaluation form through the QR code po later po sa end po ng webinar. And also we will provide the link dito po sa Zoom chat box and sa comment section po. Antayin lang po natin si Doc Tony for the presentation. We also like to acknowledge po yung presence po ng aming former Dean ng CFNR and ang MS advisor ko po si Dr. Ramon A. Rasal. Sir, hello po. And also po kay ARD Ava of FEMIA of DNR, Legazpi. Si Sir Raul, geologo ng Hibelan Foundation and Corporation. DNR offices po and its field offices, yung PENRO, Senro Personnel, EMB, FMB, NAMRIA, DNR, DOST-FPRDI, LGUs po ng AMAS, Kidapawan, Nueva Ecija, General Nakar, and yung iba pong LGUs from Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao na hindi po namin nabanggit. We also acknowledge din po yung DILG Caraga, and also po yung mga academe po natin na participants from Pisau, DMMMSU, UPLB, St. Louis University of Baguio, MMSU, and meron din po tayong participants from mining companies, from Bena Energy, Makati, and also po sa NTFP, EP, Menre po ng BARMM ng Cotabato po, and also from SFFI. Welcome po, and dito po sa ating webinar po. Maraming salamat po sa inyo pong pagdalo.
Ay, sandali lang. Noela, can you please continue kasi nawalan daw ng power si Doc Tony.
Ng internet.
Ng internet pala, internet. Nawalan ng internet si Doc Tony. So, Noela, you might want to continue.
Kaso ako nagko-control na daw.
Hindi, okay lang. It can be controlled actually. So, we're actually already controlling it right now.
So hindi ko na ano kung saan yung
Sa development part, nasa development. Page ano, Doc Tony? What page was that? 48, I think it's 48. Yeah. After ng ano, Noelas. Yeah, I think that's 40, 50. 48, that's the flavonoids.
that's my ano, that's my
51 daw, 51.
ang
Page 52. Okay.
si Tony ang nakakaalam ng mga
Okay.
so
Doc Tony, I can patch you in. I can patch you in while you're discussing. I don't know if you can hear everyone. Can you hear?
You can do it.
Sing it, Tony. Can you hear Tony Balangue? He is on my phone right now.
I can hear you.
Naririnig naman po, Sir Jem.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead, Doc Tony. So, if you are on page 52, you continue. Kami, sila na lang.
We continue, nakapat sa kanila.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, please.
Okay.
Hmm.
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Essential oils that are antiviral, resveratrol, no? And then also, I would like to point out that the hydrochloroquine came from quinine, and quinine came from cinchona species plant. And we have cinchona plantation in Bukidnon. I hope they are still there. Meaning to say they have already identified the species that can help solve the COVID-19. What are the initial listing of plant genetic species for research and development and product development? Of course, cinchona, we would like to revisit the quinine, agarwood or lapnisan for perfume additive. This is very expensive at present. They are buying it at $50,000 per kilo, $50,000 pesos per kilo of wood. Of course, Tongkat Ali for the immune system and energy booster, Banaba for anti-cancer, Sibuka for anti-inflammation, Banaba for amygdalin or B17 for anti-cancer, Ripan Calabao, Kalingap, Tianggubat,
Page 50.
Yugyugan, Kapurpo.
Doc Tony, you're on page 55, tama ba? Slide 55, which is on initial batch of priority plant genetic species for development.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So yeah.
Nakuha ba nila yon yung mga initial species?
Can you flash na lang? Should I share screen? Oliver?
Naka-flash na nakikita nila?
Yes po, Sir Jem, you can po.
Ha?
Yes po, sir, pwede po. Yes po.
Okay, please. Initial listing of...
Okay, go ahead, please. Yeah.
Okay. So, i-flash ko na lang ha.
Yeah, so let me know kung next page na sasabihin mo.
Okay, next page, you have Kalinga, Chang, Gubat, etc. No?
Okay, well, you're on page, are you talking about page alkaloids, essential oils?
Sumunod lang.
Potential social impacts.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Social impacts na tayo.
Yes.
So, employment opportunities, especially the total households in the CDFNA.
Mm-hmm.
All of this will benefit from the project. They may also establish community enterprises, of course, depending on the assistance that will be provided to them. They can directly sell raw material. And in development, of course, we expect, just like in the NGP, they are being paid for planting. In terms of the scientists, we have 11,490 scientists, but including retired scientists here, so it's declining, 3,198 in the government. So if you look at the ratio of scientists to the population, there is one scientist for 34,709. So our scientist is declining, and with this with this genetic development, more scientists, researchers, and science graduates will be increased number. In terms of potential social impact, of course, employment in SUCs, research institutions, employment in pharmaceuticals, nutraceuticals, and cosmetic wellness companies, employment of science and technology graduates. In terms of potential economic impact, we base it on the morbidity, annual morbidity, and some assumptions.
Which page can I, Dr. Tony? What page are you now?
Slide 64.
Slide 64.
63 pala, 63.
63. Let me shift to 60.
Yung potential financial impact.
Okay. Okay.
And projected cost.
Hold on.
So this graph will show us that there is an increasing sales Of course, the data used here were based on the 2015-2017 data that we generated. It could be more now because of the pandemic. So that if it is more now, then we expect the projected sales to increase also.
Let me know if you go to the next page.
Yeah, I'm now going to the next page. NPV at constant 2017 prices. We have here NPV of the net income at 6% discount rate. It's 266.97 billion.
Okay.
And in terms of effect to the gross domestic product, the last column will tell you the effect of the wealth creation compared to the projected GDP. And you will see here that it is increasing. There are 22 species considered here.
Okay. Harry, next page.
In terms of environmental impact, permanent cover, of course, because that will involve development of plantation, minimize soil erosion, carbon dioxide sequestration also increase. Components of the enhancement of wealth creation are the following: enabling policies, GR focused R&D, GR product commercialization, institutional capacity development, system of monitoring and tracking domestic and international trade, patents, copyright, trademark, knowledge management, technical assistance, and program assistance. And roles of major actors in the implementation of the enhancement of wealth creation: DNR, EMB, BMB, RE are the main actors. Regional, the BOS, TPC, HRD, SUC, supply centers, BOH, hospitals, clinics, doctors, industry, pharmaceuticals, nutra, cosmetics, etc. No? Next is CFNR, individual, professional organizations, corporations, DA, SUC, and professional organizations for soil surveys, LGUs with Forestland Ecosystems in the rural areas. They will also benefit. Next step, the FDCA, the Policy and Planning Office of the DNR requested to draft a bill, and the bill contents are also indicated here, no?
Okay. Yes.
Of course, once they have drafted the bill, they have to find or approach a Senate committee or senators who will sponsor the bill and follow up the progress of the bill until it is approved. And this is timely for next election. The new set of senators and officers of the government hopefully can help here. Plus, of course, we have the Assistant Secretary of the NR and FFB Director, Amaro, and also the former Dean, who used to be the ASEC of the DNR, or USEC of the DNR. So because of the technical problem, I am ending our presentation here. We can now proceed to the question and answer.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you po, Sir Jem, for the
it might be Tony Sanos. So you're still patched in. We can hear you just in case may mga questions.
Please shoot the questions.
Yeah, so sige, babasahin na lang sa'yo, Dr. Tony. I think sa question Q&A, there are 7 questions.
Yes.
Ako magbabasa, Oliver?
Ano naman po muna tayo, sir? Re-remind ko lang po muna yung mga participants.
Okay, sige. So post muna, Dr. Tony. Go ahead. Just wait.
Sige po. Thank you very much po, Sir Jem, Dr. Balangue, and Mr. Lasmarias for that presentation. Very well detailed po and informative. Let us give muna po ng warm round of virtual applause po sa mga speakers natin. Ayun po. May I request po, Ma'am Lasmarias, to open po.
Alam mo, hindi ako makapasok na kanila.
Recording in progress.
Okay, nakapasok na.
Okay, so
Okay po. May I request po si Ma'am Lasmarias po to open your cameras po for the open forum.
Open na.
Okay po. For Ma'am Noela po, ito po yung ating first question. Most, if not some of the sources of the medicinal plants are non-timber forest products. And these are very hard to account, or inventory of these plants is very hard to conduct. Do you have prescribed inventory methods or some of these NTFP like bamboo, resins, barks, and shrubs? Ayun po, ma'am, yung first question po natin.
Actually, wala akong I don't have a method for inventory, no. But if you look at most of the things that's being done, no, by communities, especially yung mga researchers ng Tuklas Lunas, sila yung the inventory yung most common medicinal plants being used in the community. No, so in a sense, what can be done is look at what the different communities are already using. Kung nasa IP communities, you will need to have some FPIC to be able to ask, and certain communities also do not want to tell you, no, to tell you what they're using for that one. And if you look at the researches in the different universities, they do have some inventory of where the supply are, but that's also that's part of the non-disclosure agreement with researchers. So I think what you can do is kung merong mga published studies already, then you can start the inventory, the way inventories are done for non-timber forest products. No, I'm not a forester, so I don't know how the inventory is being done, no, scientifically.
Thank you po, Ma'am Noela, po din sa answer po ninyo regarding that question. Sir Jem, makakasagot po kaya si Doc Tonie? Para po
yes, he can hear you.
Okay.
Sige po. Doc Tonie, ito po yung question po. Para po sa inyo, sir.
What was the question, Jem?
Ulitin na, Doc Tonie, ulitin ni Oliver.
Sige po, ito po yung question po, address po kay Doc Tonie. We have a bioprospecting law, EO 274 of the 1995, which protect our genetic resources from exploitation, patenting by foreign or local prospecting companies. The problem seems to be in enforcement by government and lack of information among LGUs on their responsibility to protect plant genetic resources within their forest lands, or even how to encourage locals to create wealth from these resources. What practical strategies should be taken to address these challenges, sir?
What practical strategies can we propose to address those issues?
What strategy can we address?
Yes, to address.
For the participation of the local government unit?
Yes, po, sir.
Yes.
Yes, po, sir.
I think I mentioned the strategies for the protection, and that is not only relying on the LGUs because they have limited manpower and resources also. But let's give roles or responsibility to the rural people and the indigenous people to help in the protection and management of these genetic resources. Alam nila yan kung nasaan, and they know also who are the gatherers.
Thank you po, sir.
Hello?
Yes,
sir.
They can hear.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Sa inyo
So, okay ba yun?
Yes.
Yes po, sir.
Now, regarding that, if that law is already existing, the bioprospecting law, I think
Yes,
we
sir.
have to expand it because it is limited to bioprospecting. What we want is to convert our genetic plants into that can be sold in the market and can be used by people. And there are some loopholes in bioprospecting. If we cannot follow up or monitor them in the field, then surely there would be leakages. Next question, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you po. For our next question po, directed po sa inyo pong dalawa, sir. From Dr. Celso PDS po. For those Philippine plant species that were patented by foreign countries or companies, do they have permission from the Philippine government, and how much they paid per patented product?
Yeah, good question, Director Celso Diaz. Unfortunately, wala. No permission. Even in the patenting, no? So, we were not able to get any shares from them. Mukhang very loose kasi yung ating what do you call that, implementation of genetic monitoring. Very loose. Sabi ko nga, the country is so large and it is really difficult to track what do you call this, people who are gathering specimens, having them patented, developed in other countries. Nakakato. Kasi pati yung kinakanta natin sa, ano yun? Yung may talong.
Yes, sir.
Eh, pinakuha nila. I didn't know that it is also medicinal, no? Yung saluyot at talong ba yan? The things that we would like to remedy when we have this law, Director Diaz.
Magsasagot din daw si Noela, Doc Tonie.
Okay, Noela, yeah, go ahead.
I think that has always been the problem when it comes to patents, no? Because we don't monitor or we lack the capacity or to monitor the patents that are being applied. So, but it's actually you can actually do that. You can actually look at who the yung application of patents in the web. But by the time it's there, there's already somebody who has applied for a patent, no? So, yun ang problema. It's actually the monitoring. And secondly, even if we have the genetic material and we start the studies here, once they only extract certain chemicals, no, from that, it's already another product, and that's why they patent it as another product. Although originally it comes just like erythromycin, the original product was erythromycin, but now they have parang mga chemical derivatives of erythromycin, and it's being patented as another product. It's no longer erythromycin as is. So that's where research really is very important, because for instance, kung lagundi, later on somebody extracts a certain chemical from lagundi, it's no longer lagundi, then that's another product that could be patented. So that's where we need to have all those researches, and if we only have 1 or 2 genomic centers and we have only very few HUCs and laboratories, then I think that's where we lose out in terms of research.
And po, thank you po, Ma'am Noela and Dr. Tonie po. Talagang kailangan po talaga natin ng funding agency para po ma-explore yung funding, para po ma-explore po yung ating mga genetic resources. Another question po from Karen Resentes po from OPAG, Cotabato. Po yung question niya for both of you po, ma'am and sir. I have known that IP brothers and sisters have a lot of medicinal plants. How about helping them to enumerate all medicinal plants they are using, or help them to process this as source of livelihood for IP communities?
Narinig mo, Dr. Tonie?
Yeah, narinig ko. Identification yung concern, ng question.
Ang sabi niya is how about helping the IPs enumerate all medicinal plants they are using, or help them process this as source of livelihood for IP communities?
Actually, that is part of the program, no? If they opt to do themselves the identification, the processing, that depends on them. But there should be a contract between them and if it's the government. So if they want a direct selling, they can also do that. They can also apply for a patent.
Okay. Si Noela, meron yata gusto sagot.
One of the things na ginagawa na yan ng ibang like in Palawan, ginagawa na yan ng mga IPs doon, no, in the south, southern Palawan. They're trying to problema natin is how do we protect yung rights ng IPs, no? Of course they know yung types of plants, no? We can do all the enumeration or yung research on those plants, no, kung saan sila. The problem is how do we protect yung mga resources na yan and our IPs, kasi ang question yan later on would be access and benefit sharing, no, ng genetic resources. Kasi pag na-develop yan ng isang foreign company, there's no way, although under the law, pwede na talaga namang internationally dapat merong access, merong benefit sharing, no, sa mga genetic resources. Pero kung hindi tayo aware na yun pala ay na mayroong leakage in terms of yung developing that product, then again, without proper monitoring, again, our IPs and our communities loses out in terms of yung benefits from a patent. Kasi pwede namang mag-patent ang other countries, no? They can do the patent, they have the technology to develop, but I think the problem is ano yung benefit sharing from that patent. Have we been paid yung mga royalties and so on and so forth? Yun ang we're losing out sa mga ganyan.
Okay po. Thank you po ulit sa pagsagot po ng ating question. Siguro po ito na po siguro yung last questions natin dahil po sa limited time po natin for this afternoon. Galing po ito kay Ma'am Lloyda Orape. Madam, sir, do we have genetic product patented in the Philippines or by Filipinos? If there are, what are they po?
We already have Lagundi that's being patented dito sa Philippines, no? And ang royalties niyan are already paid. It used to be na before the law, yung napass in ang DOST ang holder ng patent, and they get the royalties out of Lagundi, no? But after napass yung ano ba yun, Tony? You correct me yung law, no? In now the royalties are being paid directly to the scientists, no? Filipino scientists who develop yung Lagundi as calf preparation, both tablet at saka ano. So actually Pascual Laboratory and United Laboratories are paying royalties to market, to produce Lagundi and to market Lagundi. That's one. I think there are others na mga like Sambong. There are others, but they're not yet. Ang ano kasi when they're starting to develop a product, medyo hush pa yan, no? Hindi inaano, hindi nilalabas lahat ng information. So we have Lagundi is the most successful example ng patent by a Filipino.
Dr. Tony, may gusto po kayong idagdag na dun po sa question?
Actually, may sense yung what you call this, pending approval, ano? But they are already marketing it, lemongrass, tawa-tawa. What else? Lagundi na mention na. So, itong mga ito kasi, these are powdered, dried leaves powdered. And we do not know whether this passed through clinical test, thorough clinical test, or DNA characterization. Hindi natin alam. There are already pending patents for this medicine. For genetic plant species in the forest, I don't know of anything yet. No? Now, I would like to suggest to the DNR to come up immediately with regarding this agarwood. When I was in Mindanao, there are buyers of agarwood. Even in Luzon now, they are looking for agarwood, and they are offering a high prices. No? That's very important. So I think we should control that right away. At the same time, we should start planting agarwood. What else? Tongkat Ali is also very important. Plenty in our forest, especially in Palawan. And if we cannot protect these species, sooner or later, companies who are looking for this will be able to, get the specimen of the plants. These are high valued plant genetic species. And then, what do you call this? Of course, banaba for cancer. When we were doing this study, it was already pirated also by a pharmaceutical companies of the U.S. According to the doctors that we interviewed in Unilab, they were sending specimens to the U.S. And when they discovered the bioactive compounds for cancer, for that banaba, wala na, they cut the communication to the doctors here. So we should do our own. We should not rely from other countries. No? We should build up our capability. Kagaya na lang ngayong pandemic, naging dependent tayo sa mga gumagawa ng mga vaccine. When in fact, we have some medicine also here na kinalimutan na lamang. Yes, any more questions?
Yes, sir. That will be our last question po ngayong this afternoon po.
Okay, so
yes, sir.
yeah, what shall we say? Pasensya na at nagkaroon tayo ng technical problem beyond our control.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Kasi basa-basa sa afternoon, malimit yung unstable connection sa internet.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Okay lang po, sir.
So we would like to thank all the our attendees. Hope you learned something. FDC, of course, and our stakeholders from the REECS. Sorry we were not able to entertain all of your questions. Gusto sana namin masagot.
Yes, sir.
Napinutol tayo nitong internet.
Yes, sir. They will, they will email to us their questions and we can forward it to you, sir, kapag po may mga questions po na kailangan pong sagutin.
Email na lamang po, yes.
Yes, sir.
Email na lang.
Yes po, sir. As of now, meron na po tayong 434 participants po sa Zoom and 57 po sa Facebook Live. Mataas po ang ating view.
Yes, binabasa ko, Tony, maraming nagpapasalamat sa iyo sa chat box for your both of you and Noela C.
Talaga, maraming salamat naman sa kanila, no?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Actually, if they want to pursue medical product production, they can do it. Mga ako na mga families lang ang gumagawa. And they will be given by DOST ng equipment.
All right. Thank you.
Sige po, sir. Thank you po, sir. We will now proceed po sa awarding of the certificates to our speakers. I'll just read po the citation. The Forestry Development Center and Resources, Environment, and Economic Center for Studies, Incorporated, present the Certificate of Appreciation to Dr. Tonie O. Balangue and Ms. Noela Yes for serving as speakers in this policy forum, Enhancing Wealth Creation for Forestland Ecosystem Policy Implication, held this 10 August 2021, organized by the Forestry Development Center in partnership with Resources, Environment, and Economic Center for Studies Incorporated, with the support from the Information Technology Center of the UPLB via Zoom webinar, given this 10th day of August 2021, signed by Jem B. Castillo, President and Chair of the REECS Incorporated, Marlo D. Mendoza, Dean of College of Forestry and Natural Resources, and Director Priscila C. Dolom, Director of Forestry Development Center. Thank you so much again to our speakers. Sir, thank you po. Sir Jem, may I request po si Director Dolom po and Dr. Jem po to open your cameras po for our picture taking opportunity. Ayan po. Sa documentation team po, kindly screenshot na lang po or take a picture po ng ating awarding. Okay po, pagbilang ko po ng 3, let's smile. Let's give our biggest smile. 1, 2, 3, smile. Thank you so much po, Dr. Dolom and Dr. Castillo, and also to our speaker. So everyone, let us give a warm of virtual applause again po sa ating speakers despite of the technical problem po. Ay na-deliver po yung ating presentation. Now we will proceed po to our closing remarks. To give us a synthesis of the presentation and closing remarks, here is our director, Dr. Priscila C. Dolom. Ma'am, kayo na po. Thank you po.
Thank you very much, Oliver. Sorry po for the technical problem. It is beyond our control kung mawalan po na electricity and internet connection. Yan daw po kasi ang new normal. Okay, to our dear speakers, guests, participants, ladies and gentlemen, a pleasant good afternoon. On behalf of the researchers and administrative personnel of the Forestry Development Center, I would like to thank all of you who always find time to attend and participate in our Forest Policy ETalks, the FDC Webinar Series 2021. I especially would like to thank our partners, the Information Technology Center of UPLB, Dr. Danilo Mercado and Mark Jan Agsunod, the Resources, Environment, and Economic Center for Studies Incorporated, or REECS, for trusting us to share the research results. Our supportive Dean, Professor Marlo D. Mendoza, for being always available to give his opening remarks during our webinars. Dr. Jem Castillo, for his biblical message, and sharing us some challenging questions, expectations from our speakers. And our two speakers, Dr. Tonie O Balangue, our former director, and Ms. Noela C. Lasmarias, for a very informative and interesting topic on enhancing wealth creation from the Forestland Ecosystem's policy implications. Our speakers outline for us the new opportunities, problems, and issues for enhancing wealth creation from the Forestland ecosystems through the plant genetic resources as well as their policy recommendations. According to them, there are three methods of enhancing wealth creation from the forestland ecosystems relative to plant genetic species. One is through market promotion and implementation of bioprospecting value of forestland ecosystems for genetic plants. Second is the applications of multiple economic instruments in the multiple uses of forestland ecosystems, goods, and services. And third is the development and marketing of plant genetic species for medicinal, nutraceutical, cosmetic, wellness, and other industrial products. The speakers limited their study in the first and third methodology, which is more on market and development, while the applications of multiple economic instruments will be further studied, kahit meron na po silang initial initiative on this. In terms of market promotion and implementation, they have discussed fully the global trade and economics of genetic products, the organ value, and the bioprospecting value. On the developmental activities, several proposed activities were discussed, as well as its potential impacts on social, economic, financial, and environmental. In addition, a problem-free analysis of the depletion and depreciation of genetic resources in the biodiversity pool was presented by the speakers. Some of the problems and issues mentioned are piracy of traditional knowledge and research results, poaching, illegal collection and illegal patenting of products of genetic resources, inadequate monitoring mechanism, and lack of effective tracking system, lack of a holistic genetic resources management system, undefined role and responsibility of indigenous peoples and rural communities in the protection and management of genetic resources, among others. Considering these problems and issues, the forestland ecosystem resources with high potentials and demands need immediate policy and management attention to save them from wasteful utilization. Policies on genetic resources conservation, development, utilization, and management are necessary to generate wealth from them based on their high conservation and economic values. It is then recommended for FDC and TNR to draft a bill on the conservation, development, utilization, and management of the plant genetic resources whose primary objective is the enhancement of wealth creation from the forestland ecosystem. We are honored that REECS, through Dr. Balangue, has entrusted to the FDC the drafting of the said policy or bill. Rest assured, Dr. Tonie, that we will collaborate with the DNR to pursue this activity. In the open forum, there was an enthusiastic response among the participants, and many give their comments, suggestions, and recommendations on the paper presented through our chat box and the Q&A tab. However, due to time constraints, the questions were limited. In closing, let me thank the FDC staff, palakpak dyan, for their undying commitment, hard work, expertise, and support to the center to carry out its mandate to conduct policy research, policy analysis, and formulation, fora, and advocacy in the forestry sector. As what our Dean said, FDC has a unique and strategic role in the development of the forestry sector. FDC should capitalize on that uniqueness and be a significant player. We are lucky that the CFNR UPLB administration are solidly behind us to pursue our mandate with vision and vigor. Again, thank you very much. Stay safe and mabuhay sa tayong lahat. Thank you.